Speicher and Chris Geesman and Dr. Dean. Let's first of all, we're going to be looking right here in this geographical area right here. So I wanted you to start and just paint a picture of the landscape of Penn High School the summer before Chris Geesman is ready to arrive on campus.
Well, I arrived in late July of 1971, and Penn was what I would consider an underdeveloped gem, and the success that Penn High School had was primarily around their basketball program. They had been very, very successful. And some of the other sports had some kinds of success. Wrestling was reasonably successful. But there was basically across many of the programs in the school system what I have come to call a culture of mediocrity. You know, it wasn't that they had any kind of a strategic plan for developing programs. There was no strategic plan for selecting coaches that could develop the program, and there was no plan for mentoring coaches. There was no system in place to be able to have a long-standing staff in place. But most of the success, as I said, was in the basketball arena. In the time that I was there, the football program had little to no success. So Phil Lambert was the high school principal that we had just hired from down in the Lafayette area, South Mount High School. And Phil and I decided that we needed to put a different focus on the football program. The first game that I saw Penn play was against Mishawaka, and I was about 10 minutes late because I didn't understand that there was no parking at Mishawaka and that you had to park 2 or 3 blocks away. So by the time I got there, Penn had scored their maybe 1 or 2 of their 6 points touchdowns during the school year. They had run a play back, a kickoff back against Mishawaka. The score ended up being 60 or 66-6. So I got to see Mishawaka score a lot of points. So anyway, there were a number of issues with the football program, and one of the major ones was that there wasn't the right kind of leadership. There was no program. It was treated like any other sport. The coach would show up and there wasn't much preparation. There was no strategic player development. So Phil Lambert and I decided that we had to go a different direction. So at the time, I had just come off being on the board at Ball State University. And Dave McLean was a friend and somebody that I trusted very much. So I called Dave and I said, give me 5 names in the Midwest of coaches that we ought to talk to if we really want to build a program. Geesman was one of the names. He told me about this country boy from Rensselaer that was over in Kenton, Ohio. And so we contacted, and I think Phil made the contacts as I recall. We contacted these 5 candidates, and all 5 of them decided they wanted to talk to us. So we talked to all 5 of them, and as we went through the process, it filtered down that in Lambert and my way of thinking that Chris Geesman offered us the greatest hope to take the program in a different direction. So at that time, our offices were downtown Mishawaka over the bakery. And so Chris was interviewed there, and ultimately he was the person that we were most interested in talking to further. So as you would expect, he had a lot of questions, and I'm not so sure that he thought there was much of a future at Penn High School in terms of developing a football program. So I told him, I said, don't think about the current, think about the future. Think about what this place will be like in the next 5 years, the next 10 years. And, I could see that the school system was going to develop very differently than what it was for a lot of different reasons. But anyway, what we were impressed with is, one, he taught English, and he appeared to be intellectual and an academic. And at any rate, we thought, well, he would be a great fit to teach English. I think he did that 1 year, and then he morphed himself back into phys ed. And in fact, I think he negotiated his way out that he only taught about 2 classes out of the full school day. And so, we made the offer to him. And what we told all the candidates was that they could bring 1 or 2 staff members with them into the leadership role with building a program. We didn't know that we were going to get Charlie Lori. Chris brought Charlie Lori with him, and obviously that changed the culture of Penn football from day one when they ran out on the field, and Charlie started beating players' heads with their helmets on. If they were smart, they kept their helmets on. And so that created a lot of enthusiasm and everything else. In previous seasons, we'd have more band parents there than we would football fans to see a game because we had not had success. Another interesting point is there was a gal by the name of Joy Chamberlain. Her husband was a cardiologist here in town, Don, and Joy used to come up in the stands and kind of beat me up at every game. She'd say, "When are you going to hire a football coach that can win a game?" I said, "Joy, be patient." I said, "We kind of have to let this process play its way through," and I said, "I will assure you that we will hire a football coach that will be successful." Well, when we decided to not offer a contract for coaching to the football coach prior to Chris being here, we had that hearing out at Grissom Middle School, and we had a bunch of parents show up telling us how wonderful the football coach was and how inconsiderate we were that the superintendent and the high school principal were recommending to the board to go a different direction. We got through that process as you usually do, and then we offered the job to Chris, and the rest is pretty much history.
All right, Chris, I want you to, you've heard Dr. Speicher's version of this now. Give us an idea on your trip over, meeting Dr. Dean and the principal, and just kind of give us your side of the story. 'Cause there's, as you always say, there's two ways to skin a cat. There's always two sides to every story, right?
I pretty much agree with everything you said. What we were talking about last night may not fit on camera. It's what we disagree on. But the thing was, I was at Kenton High, and we were in the bottom third of our league, the Western Buckeye League, in enrollment. We'd had a 9-1 season, and we worked like heck, and we'd be like 7-2-1. We could never win the league. There was always somebody just had more talent than us, and I vowed that if I ever took another job, it'd be somewhere where you could win not only league championships, but you could head for state championships. So I had in mind what I wanted, and then my best friend Tom Lansettle left to go to Miami of Ohio, and then he ended up down to NC State, and socially we did everything together, and with his girlfriend, later his wife, and my wife, we did, and he'd just taken the head job at Mansfield Malabar, and then prior to going down to Miami. But anyway, he left, and Kenton was kind of a small town, and I was kind of, I figured this would be a good time to look around. And anyway, just that day, I had a phone call down there. It was from Lola Whitworth.
Yeah.
Who was that? So anyway, I called it. I knew it was in northern Indiana. Asked for Miss Whitworth, and she says, yeah, I'm calling for Phil Lambert. He wanted to talk to you. I said, oh, yeah? She says, we want to know if you're interested in coming over here and being a football coach. I said, yes, I am. What's the name of the school? But I knew I was ready to look, and when I went over, and Dean said, first of all, I thought maybe I already had a better job in Kenton. I mean, we got things kind of established the way we wanted, and had a bunch of players coming back, all this, and I remember going up, and the old equipment room was above the swimming pool. It was real humid. I picked up a pair of practice pants and kind of straightened them out, and they ripped right down the middle. Stuff hadn't been washed and everything. And I remember talking to Dr. Speicher. I said, so first of all, I don't think I'm interested in the job as it is right now. I said, I'm not trying to hold you up. I'm not trying to ask for more things if I take the job. But I just said, right now, I don't think I'm very much interested. And anyway, he talked, and the thing he was talking about, looked down the road, he had his hand on his desk, and this is where we are now, but this is where we're going to be. And he's saying, I'm sitting there staring at his hand up his face. Job. But there was three things that really attracted me. The first was him. I mean, I knew there was going to be some pressure with the job. I mean, he remembers it a little different than I, but I'll just say the general rule was he wanted some results. He was going to give you what you had to have within reason, and he'd listen to you, and if you justify things, he'd try to get it for you. But he had high expectations, and he wanted results. He wanted to be at least 500 by the third year. I mean, and which seems modest enough. I thought it was very fair, but when you looked at the film from the previous year, you thought that might be a pipe dream, but it wasn't. The third year we're undefeated. So, but it was great. So he had high expectations, but I like that. I'd like a place where they want you to win and they expect you to win. They give you what you have to win, but man, you better produce. I just like working in that kind of atmosphere. I don't like the fact where, if you don't get any complaints from the kids or parents, you can coach here forever. I don't care if I didn't want that. I wanted somebody that knew what it took to win and wanted to win. So, I mean, I kind of could thrive in that kind of environment. I like that a lot. So Dr. Speicher was the number one selling point about this job. He was a visionary, and I was planning on having a family, and he understood one thing. Obviously, I wanted my kids to have the best education they could possibly have. And he understood that for everybody's kids. But also, it was important to me that my kids be in a good football program. I wanted both. Oh, he understood that, and his goal was, he always said, if we're going to offer any program at Penn High School, it's going to be the best it can possibly be, and we want to be number one in everything. And, that's what I wanted to hear. That's exactly what I wanted to hear. And I also liked the people he'd surrounded him with. He mentioned Phil Lambert, great principal. It was just, people say, would you like to do it all again? Well, yeah, you'd like to, but everything was in place. We had the right people and the right jobs, and as Dr. Speicher said, Charlie, Laura, I just added so much, enthusiasm. I mean, we just had everything the stars were just aligned right. So he was the main reason I took the job. And the other two things I'd liked is he mentioned they'd won in other sports, and I could tell the school's going to get big. And I don't know what else you could possibly want. You had a challenge there, but it's a realistic challenge. You're going to get help and backing from the administration and everything, and the school. As he alluded to, you could see that it was going to be something special. It wasn't at that time. It wasn't bad, but now it's better. I remember the first time we got ranked in the state in 1975. Steve Herman from AP called me and said, "Hey, you guys made it number one this week." I said, "Oh, great." He said, "Answer one question. Where's Osceola?" People, they didn't even know where Penn High School was. Everybody had the maps out trying to find. So it was kind of great. When you do all that stuff, the 83 state, when you do all that stuff for the first time, it's pretty neat.